Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
When we hear the name Casanova, we often think of a certain type of man. People use this name for someone who is charming and has many romantic partners. This idea of a Casanova is a simple one, a man who is only interested in seducing women. He is a famous stereotype from history. But this popular idea is not fair to the real person. It hides the truth about a much more complex man. The real Giacomo Casanova was a person with many talents. He was not just a lover. He was very intelligent and knew about many different subjects. For example, he was a writer who translated old famous books. He was a skilled mathematician who understood difficult ideas. He also worked as a spy for different European governments. He created France's national lottery, which was a big success. He was an adventurer who traveled thousands of miles across the continent. His most important work was his own life story. He wrote a very long book about his experiences. This book is one of the best ways to understand life in 18th century Europe. Casanova was a man of his time. He was brilliant and had modern ideas, but he was also flawed and could be cruel. He met some of the most famous people of his age, like the philosopher Voltaire. To understand him, we must look beyond the myth. We must ask, who was the real man? This is the story of that brilliant and difficult person. 2. A young man in Venice. Giacomo Casanova was born in Venice on April 2, 1725. His parents were actors. His mother, Zanetta, was a well-known actress. In the 18th century, acting was not a respected job, so his family was not part of high society. Casanova had a difficult childhood. He was often sick and felt very lonely. He wrote that he was a sad and quiet boy. When he was only 1 year old, his parents went to London to work. They left him with his grandmother. This made him feel abandoned, and he always wanted attention. A friend of the family suggested that he go to Padua for a better education. When he was 9, he moved to the city. He was a brilliant student. At the very young age of 12, he started at the University of Padua. He learned very quickly and impressed his teachers. He studied law, but he was not very interested in it. He liked learning about new ideas in science and philosophy more. He finished his studies and got his law degree when he was 17. After university, Casanova returned to Venice. He tried to start a career in the church. For a smart young man with no money, this was a good way to find success. However, Casanova's personality was not right for the life of a priest. He got into trouble and had to leave this career behind. He needed a new job, so he became a musician. He played the violin in a theater, the same theater where his parents once worked. He also started to gamble with cards to make money. His life was uncertain. Then, one day, his luck changed completely. He helped a rich and powerful man named Senator Matteo Bragadin, who was very sick. Casanova saved his life. The senator was very thankful. He treated Casanova like a son and gave him money and a place to live. This transformed Casanova's life. Suddenly, he could live like a nobleman. He wore expensive clothes, went to exclusive parties, and met important people. His life of adventure in Venice was just beginning. 3. The Great Escape. Casanova's life in Venice was exciting, but it was also dangerous. The Venetian Inquisition watched him. The Inquisition was a powerful group in the church and government. They did not like his ideas. They did not like his gambling, his friends from other countries, or his interest in magic. They thought he was a problem for the city. One night in July 1755, the police came to his room. They arrested him. He was 30 years old. They did not give him a reason, and there was no trial. They took him to a famous prison called I Piombi, or the Leads. This prison was in the attic of the Doge's Palace, the most important building in Venice. The conditions in I Piombi were terrible. The roof was made of lead plates. This made the cells very hot in the summer and freezing cold in the winter. The rooms were small and dark. Big rats, as large as rabbits, were everywhere. Casanova was also tormented by fleas. The prison was made to break a person's spirit. Everyone believed it was impossible to escape from I Piombi. No one had ever done it before. Casanova was in the prison for 15 months. At first, he waited. He thought there was a mistake. But after many months, he knew he had to escape by himself. He found a piece of iron and slowly made it into a sharp tool. Every night, he used it to make a hole in the wooden floor of his cell. But then a guard moved him to a different cell. Casanova had to make a new plan. He decided to go up, not down. He secretly sent messages to another prisoner, a priest named Marino Balbi. Together, they planned the escape. On the night of November 1, 1756, they put their plan into action. Balbi used the iron tool to break through his ceiling. Then he climbed over to Casanova's cell and helped him break through his ceiling too. They climbed onto the lead roof of the Doge's palace. It was night, and the roof was slippery and dangerous. They were high above the city. One wrong step meant death. After hours of careful work, they found a window and climbed inside the palace. They were in the offices. A guard saw them, but Casanova was wearing his good clothes from the day of his arrest. The guard thought they were gentlemen who were accidentally locked in. He politely opened the main doors for them. Casanova and Balbi walked down the great giant staircase to freedom. The story of this amazing escape quickly traveled across Europe. It made Casanova a celebrity. 4. A famous traveler. After his amazing escape from prison, Casanova became famous all over Europe. The story of his escape was exciting, and people everywhere wanted to meet him. He left Venice and traveled to Paris. In Paris, he was a celebrity. He used his new fame to get close to important people in the French government. He had a very clever idea to make money for the country. He started the first national lottery in France. The idea was a great success. The lottery made a lot of money for the French king, and it also made Casanova a very rich man. For a time, he had everything he wanted. With his money and fame, Casanova started to travel. He traveled thousands of miles across the continent by coach. This was a difficult and long journey in the 18th century. He was a man of the Enlightenment, and he wanted to meet the great thinkers of his time. He went to Switzerland to meet the famous writer and philosopher Voltaire. They talked about many ideas. Casanova wanted to show Voltaire how smart he was. He also traveled to St. Petersburg in Russia. There, he had a meeting with the ruler, Catherine the Great. She was interested in his ideas for her country. He was not just a traveler, he was part of the great conversations of his time. Casanova's life was one of constant movement. He lived in many of the great cities of Europe, including London, Madrid, and Vienna. He felt at home in many different countries and could speak several languages. He was a true man of the world. But his life was not always easy. His plans and business ideas often failed. He made enemies because he could be difficult and sometimes cheated people. As a result, he was often in trouble with the police. Many cities told him to leave. He was always running from debt or from the authorities. His life was a great adventure, but he was always moving on to the next place. 5. His love life. People know the name Casanova today. They usually think of a man who loved many, many women. This is true. In his famous book, The Story of My Life, he writes about his relationships with more than 100 different women. For this reason, many people believe he was just a simple seducer who moved from one woman to the next. But this idea is not the complete story. His relationships were often more complex. Casanova was not just interested in a woman's beauty. He was very attracted to women who were intelligent and independent. He loved to talk and debate. His best relationships were with women who could challenge his ideas. For him, a conversation could be as exciting as a kiss. He believed the best love was a meeting of two minds, not just two bodies. This was an unusual idea for a man in the 18th century. The most important relationship in his life shows this clearly. Her name was Henriette, and she was a mystery. He never knew her real name or much about her family. He met her in 1749 when she was traveling alone, disguised as a male army officer. This showed Casanova that she was brave and did not follow the usual rules for women. He asked her to be with him, making it her decision. For 3 months they lived together in Parma. It was a perfect time for Casanova. They were equals. They spent their days reading books, discussing philosophy, and playing music together. Henriette was a talented musician who played the cello. Their connection was deep. It was based on respect and shared interests, not just physical attraction. When Henriette decided to leave him and return to her family, he was very sad. She left a message for him on the glass of an inn window. With a diamond ring he gave her, she wrote, "You will also forget Henriette." He never did. For the rest of his life, he remembered her as his true love, the one person who truly understood him. His love for Henriette shows what Casanova really looked for in a partner. While he had many short affairs, his deepest feelings were for women who had their own minds and their own talents. This part of his story is very different from the simple myth of the great seducer. 6. A complicated man. Casanova is famous for his love life. But it is important to look at the difficult parts too. He was not a simple hero of love stories. There was a dark side to his relationships with women. Sometimes his actions were very cruel. His own stories show that his behavior was not always good, even for people in the 18th century. He could be selfish, using his charm and intelligence to get what he wanted from others. He often left women after a short, passionate time. For example, he had relationships with girls who were very young. He also bought a young girl in Russia to be his servant, which was like slavery. In another story from Venice, a mother said he hurt her daughter. In his book, Casanova wrote that he paid the mother for her daughter. When the girl did not want to be with him, he got angry and hit her. He did not seem to understand that this was wrong. He was surprised when he got into trouble for it. This shows how he often used his power and money without thinking about the other person's feelings. But this is not the whole story. Casanova was a complicated man. He also had some very surprising and modern ideas about women. He wrote a book where he argued that women's minds were the same as men's minds. He said that women were just as intelligent as men. He believed the only difference was education. He thought that if women had the same education, they could do the same things as men. He also said that his best relationships were with smart, independent women. He enjoyed talking with them and sharing ideas. This is the biggest question about Casanova. How could a man have such good, modern ideas, but also do such bad things? There was a big space between what he said and what he did. He wrote about respecting women, but his actions were often harmful. His thoughts were advanced for his time, but his behavior was often selfish. This shows the deep problem in his personality. He was a brilliant man with good ideas, but he was also a man who hurt people. He was not a simple villain, but he was certainly not a hero. He was both. 7. The Last Job. Casanova's life of adventure was over. By the year 1785, he was 60 years old. He was not rich anymore, and he felt very lonely. The famous cities of Europe, like Paris and Vienna, did not welcome him now. To them, he was just a tiresome old man with a bad reputation. He desperately needed money and a job. Help came from a young nobleman, Count von Waldstein. The Count offered Casanova a position as the librarian in his remote castle. The castle was in Dux, a small town in Bohemia, which is now the Czech Republic. For a man who loved big cities and exciting parties, Dux was the end of the world. It was a quiet place in the mountains, and Casanova felt trapped and isolated. His new life was very unhappy. He was an Italian man in a place where everyone spoke German. He could not talk to the other servants, and they did not like him. They thought he was arrogant and strange. They played tricks on him and made him feel foolish. The Count, His only friend was often away traveling. Casanova was completely alone and fell into a deep depression. A doctor gave him some advice to fight his sadness. He suggested that Casanova should write his life story. So Casanova began to write. This project became his final and most important job. He wrote for more than 10 hours every day. He did not have his old diaries, so he wrote everything from memory. He wrote in French because it was the language of culture across Europe. As he wrote about his youth, his travels, and his loves, he started to feel better. Remembering his past made his lonely present easier to live with. He laughed again when he wrote about his old adventures. He wrote thousands of pages. This huge memoir was called Histoire de ma vie, or The Story of My Life. It became a very important book. He wrote about everything: politics, food, music, and the conversations he had with kings and famous thinkers. It gave a perfect picture of life in the 18th century. This book was Casanova's last great work, and it is the reason we still remember him today. 8. His true legacy. Giacomo Casanova died on June 4, 1798. He was 73 years old and living in a castle in Bohemia, far from his home in Venice. He was not rich or famous when he died, and he was very lonely. He was buried in a simple grave in the castle's cemetery. Today, no one knows exactly where it is. For a short time, the world forgot him. His real fame came many years later. After his death, his giant memoir, Histoire de ma vie, The Story of My Life, was finally published. Suddenly, people all over Europe were reading his amazing stories. The book made him famous, not his actions when he was alive. This book is his most important achievement. Many people think it is only about his relationships with over 100 women, but it is much more. The book is like a time machine to the 18th century. Casanova describes everything in great detail: the food people ate, the clothes they wore, and how they traveled by coach on long, difficult roads. He writes about his conversations with famous kings, queens, and thinkers. This book was Casanova's last great work, and it is the reason we still remember him today. Because of this, his book is a priceless record of European life. Today, the word Casanova usually means a man who is a great lover. But this popular idea is not his true legacy. His real genius was not in love, but in writing. He was a fantastic writer who remembered and wrote down his entire life with incredible detail. In his book, he was very honest. He did not pretend to be a perfect hero. He wrote about his good moments and his failures. He showed his intelligence and kindness, but he also showed his cruelty and selfishness. His true success was telling his own complex story. That is his real legacy. Do you think his great book makes up for the bad things he did in his life?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.